from just selling to a more general process of value creation, communication, etc. He first published his textbook in 1967, and I was privileged to study marketing based on that book in 1976. He has won numerous awards. In 1975, Professor Kotler was the first recipient of the Leader in Marketing Thought established by the American Marketing Association. So without further ado, I hand over to Professor Kotler. We're all waiting to hear from him. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor Mulkey, and it's a pleasure to have you with us and to maybe make a lot of comments about your observations as I go through my own presentation. I want to tell the students and the listeners that I plan to discuss 7 books that I have written since 2015. There's usually the idea that when people have been successful, they retire and disappear. To me, I'm always a learner, not just a teacher. There's so many wonderful things to know about. And so I keep realizing that to understand something, I've got to be able to put it in my own words. And that accounts for some of these books. And I've chosen 7 because they're the most recent books I wrote, but also because they cover some of the major topics that you are all wrestling with. And so the first book is interesting because it's a biography, and I like to read biographies. I'd certainly like to read the biography of people like Jeff Bezos. I mean, look, he created Amazon and so much more, and he's now got us up in space. And I'd like to read the one of Musk, and he's up in space too, besides creating the wonderful automobile that drives itself. But I wanted to start with this particular biography because I co-wrote it with a great business leader, Mr. Komari, Shigetaka Komari, and his company, which is called Fujifilm. Now, why is it of interest for you and others to read a book? By the way, the book's title is something like Never Stop, Winning Through Innovation. So I chose this book because if a company doesn't innovate, it dies. And do you know that this huge company, Amazon, has a motto that was established by Jeff Bezos, the founder of the company? He said, "We are going to die as a company. Your job is to delay the death of the company." He said to his employees, "Your job is to delay the death of the company, because all companies will die." So the point is innovation. The world is changing. You can't just sit there and not change. Okay, well, the change was very big for Fujifilm. As a matter of fact, for both Kodak and Fujifilm. And none of you in the audience are still buying film, are you? You're not buying and developing film. You have a smartphone, and you've made obsolete film. Not film really, because we use film for a lot of other purposes. But what do? Well, the interesting thing is Kodak knew about the smartphone, and in fact had established a small group around it. But the top people said, we can't introduce it because it will kill our business. Our business is worth so much selling these yellow boxes of film. So they buried it, and then they knew that eventually that business would die. And Kodak is no longer around. There are pieces of Kodak around, but Kodak failed. So why didn't Fujifilm, number 2? failed. Remember the green boxes of film by Fujifilm. And the reason they didn't fail is singularly Mr. Komari, CEO Komari. I had the great pleasure of meeting him in Japan, in Tokyo, and he invited me to consider his history and what he did to save the firm. And we found out we were both the students of that very famous thinker in business, Peter Drucker. And Peter Drucker's one of his main points was that the two most important functions of a firm, and there are many functions, there's human resources, there's finance, there is operations, and so on. The two most important ones are marketing and innovation. And both are needed. You got to be good at both, because you could be good at marketing, but you're just marketing the same thing. So your firm is going to come to an end. You could be good at innovation, but you're not hitting any great idea to innovate. So we made this book, which is partly biographical. It's not a textbook. It describes in real time and place everything that Mr. Komari did to make the company last. And the first inspiration of his was that he knew there were many treasured secrets in a company as big as Fujifilm. They had to lick so many problems just in being able to make colored film. There are 14 steps in making color film work. Well, they had so many treasured ideas with potential that he said to his company, when he announced that they're not going to disappear, he said, we have so many products that we can make with patented ideas that no one else has. Let's try to do that. All of his employees stuck with him. And the firm now is not only alive, but it's almost like what do you call it? When there's a rebirth, a new beginning. That firm is now a leader in Japan and in Asia. In pharmaceuticals, they're even involved in the COVID problem. In medicines, in images, but images of all kinds, the kind we do of patients in a hospital, great imaging of their bodies and their lungs and so on. And also he's even into skincare that came out of his understanding of biology and so on. So I've been to their lab in Tokyo. What is it? You just walk after table after table after table, and you see each one is about a project that is being developed to be launched if, in fact, it goes through all the stages of new product development. So I cite this book because we wrote it together to not only catch the drama of a firm that should have died, but a firm that recreated itself out of the hidden treasures that it had, and chose a wonderful name for itself: Never Stop Winning Through Innovation. So there's many lessons to learn. Let's move on to the next book. The next book that I enjoyed writing with my friend Christian Sakar is called Brand Activism. Brand Activism, From Purpose to Action. Now, what is a brand? A brand is a actual treasure. Do you know that what a company's value is largely what the company created as a brand? Now, I know that it's not on the books. What's on the books are the equipment of the firm, and many things that are you could buy and sell, but you could buy and sell the brand of a company. There are companies that come to you for your brand. They want to own your brand. So even though it is not a fixed thing, like it doesn't have a market price, just a piece of equipment that will be subject to having a car. The car, if you sold your car, it has a market price, but the brand would be negotiated. So, but what is a brand? Well, normally we thought we need to put a name on our version of that product, whether it's a product is coffee or an automobile, put a name. And we wanted it to be a name that maybe suggests the kind of product. There's a company called Frigidaire. Well, frigid is about being cold, and Frigidaire made refrigerators. So there's a lot of good work that goes into branding. In fact, there are experts at branding, and there are companies that you might go to for help. In fact, when they were going to make a new car at Ford Motor, they were saying, should we call it the Edsel? Why Edsel? Edsel was one of the Ford brothers. Under Henry Ford, Edsel was a brother. They thought Edsel. Now, they ended up spending millions to find the name for the new car. And they thought it tested well, but the car itself was a dud. And the brand didn't do anything for it. What we're trying to do in this book is not just saying branding is important, but how to really make your brand work for you. But just a thought before I talk about that. um, let me just say, should the brand say anything about what your company values? Or should it just describe a product? Should it be just a name for a product you make? It should, I believe, express what you're all about. What's your company's values? And the reason I say that is increasingly with the internet, any buyer can find out almost anything about a company, even with you, the company, not telling what you're about. I can find out if, when you say that you care about the environment as a company, whether you're really just doing what we call greenwashing, claiming that you're paying attention to sustainability, or you're actually involved in cleaning up the ocean. You're contributing money and effort because you're Coca-Cola, right? You need water. You can't sell Coke without water. Water is under risk. Do you know there's now a price for water there's a stock in the U.S. stock exchange that buying water is getting a price. So the point is, we will know whether your company cares about anything beyond making money. The issue is, if you're a company that's only there to make profit and don't have a larger purpose, we'll catch on to that. And we're going to buy from those companies who have a purpose that is like our purpose, to make the world a better place. And so how do you do that? How do you choose a cause as a company to back up, to show you care about it? And you're doing, like, let's take Starbucks. Starbucks leader is brilliant. He says, we got a real problem with our cups. People need a cup when they get their coffee, and then they have to throw the cup away. So there's a big management problem of cups that are used up. Do you just throw them into the water? No. Do you, can you make cups that dissolve eventually themselves? Well, he's always thinking about things like that. So a company has to care about the larger environment and what its activities are doing to the environment it works in. And that comes up in our book, Brand Activism, that companies have to make the brand much more than just a name. And the thought I was thinking of is branding all of marketing? Aren't they the same? People sometimes tell me marketing is branding, right? I say, no, marketing is a bigger idea. Branding only takes place when you have already made a product and you're trying to make it work and you're communicating. Branding is the communication. But should you have made that product? How did you come? What's your next product going to be? Marketing is about finding needs, strong needs that are not being met, and creating answers to those needs in the form of products and services. And so branding is part of the marketing process, namely creating a nice, effective name for the product. All right, let me move on to the third book. The third book has just been released, and it's Marketing 5.0. Now, some of you may have heard that there was a 1.0. Yes, there was a 2.0, 3.0. What is this? Is this an annual book? Is this a textbook, by the way? No, a textbook comes out maybe if it's redone, if there's a new edition, it would be maybe 3 to 5 years. A textbook is a very big thing to develop. We're introducing my 16th edition of Marketing Management very shortly, the 16th edition. I get a little pleasure because I studied under, my economics course was Paul Samuelson's book. And Paul Samuelson's book was treasured by everyone learning economics. And it turns out that he had to quit at the 10th edition. He just gave up because it's a lot of work. And we're on the 16th edition. But the main thing is, those are textbooks. They're at 500 pages. We thought that it would be good every 2 or 3 years to put out a shorter book that captures what has happened in the field of marketing. By background, 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 were introduced in one book called 3.0. We meant by 1.0 those companies that just make something and describe how it works. So it's just functional marketing. But if you're going to do that same product, 2.0, you're going to get and touch the emotions of the user of the product. You're going to connect with what really might excite them about it. So it's more emotional. And point 3 is, if you're doing 3.0 with the same product, you're talking about how it fits into the world and makes lives better. It makes people healthier. You give it its bigger purpose. That's 3.0. When we did 4.0 3 years ago, I think, that had to do with saying that the book is going to talk about how your company could digitalize itself. This was the stage where companies knew that you cannot avoid digitalizing your business. And how should you go through a digital transformation? So that was 4.0. This one goes further. It not only talks about digitalization, it talks about all the new technologies. Here's questions we put to companies. Do you use drones? You don't? Couldn't there be some purpose? Even Amazon is thinking of a drone delivering the product to some people. Do you use 3D printing? Well, what's that? Well, by the way, it's being called 5D printing when it gets very elaborate. Namely, do you make models? Do you print models of parts and products that you can test that way? In fact, even if you don't use 3D printing, why don't you use what we call virtual make a product, develop what is essentially a filming of what the product would look like that you're thinking of making without investing anything to make it. So you're saving yourself. You're going to let people get a pair of glasses. They're going to look through it and they're going to experience the product, maybe, and see it in use. And then you ask them, are you impressed? Would you buy such a product? Well, what would it cost? Yes, I could be interested, and so on. So we want you to use more virtual technologies to give people a virtual experience with a potential product. Well, we can cover a lot of things. What, are you good at facial recognition, voice recognition? Have you made any chat bots? What's a chat bot? Well, a chat bot will be your future psychiatrist. You're going to be sitting down and saying, I've got a problem. And the chat bot would say, what's your problem? And you're going to tell your problem. And chat bots will, like a psychiatrist, ask you a question related. Before you know it, you're having a conversation with software. And, but it could be about a new product. It could be in the store. You can see a chance to ask a question about this new displayed product, and the chat box will answer your questions. Well, anyways, in Marketing 5.0, with the subtitle Technology for Humanity, we talk about more than digitalization. We talk about the brand new things are happening. Let me move on to the fourth book. I worked with two interesting people on this book. Waldemar Foch is a German, and he and I have done other books on B2B marketing, B2B, when a business is selling and trying to market to another business. We even talked about, in one of our books, it was called ingredient branding. You know, it's so interesting. Whenever you get a product, it has a lot of ingredients. And you don't know, like when you buy a computer, do you know anything about what's inside that computer? Did you know about there was a chip inside that computer, and who made the chip? And so the book called Ingredient Marketing is how do you, as a company that makes the ingredient, something that's not seen as a whole, it's sort of hidden. It could be NutraSweet, like when you are having coffee and you're putting some artificial sugar in. How do you get people to demand that ingredient be part of your product? Because otherwise, the one making the product will just buy the cheapest ingredients. How do you make your ingredient special? That's one of our books. So I've worked with him on this book, and also with the other person who's very, very good at marketing in Europe. So what is H2H marketing? It's to start talking about not producers and consumers so much as a human being and another human being, making marketing H2H, human to human. And you know, when we use the words producers and consumers, it's very interesting. You know, a lot of consumers are producers. I mean, any one of you, if you're a student, you might end up in doing what we call DTC, direct to consumer. You might find a list, a very micro list of people and their emails that all have a certain need, and you can create a service or a product and send emails to these people that such a product exists. And if you're going to do that, you're not just a consumer, a young person consuming a lot. You become a producer by choosing to use another side of your nature. You want to produce something. So all producers like General Electric and Ford Motor Company, they're consumers too. They are making a lot of consumer choices when they put products together that they're and make their products. They're choosing suppliers, they're customers. Actually, they are consumers and customers too, big companies. So we're into really trying to model what is it like if we put away those names and just say, I'm trying to work with another human being, and I take a full view of a human being who has emotions, who has different criteria. I think it's a disservice to say, oh, I'm dealing with a profit maximizing human being, that if I'm selling to another business, all they care about is price. That's ridiculous, because just think of the airline business. When a company thinks, do I buy a Boeing aircraft or to buy the European competitor? There's so much that goes on. We're human beings, and so on. So in the book, what we liked about it is that we introduced 3 special new types of marketing. That one of them is, let me just not mistake the exact line. Yes, one is, we think that design thinking must become an essential part of marketing thinking. Now, it has always been in our mind that we're designing a product, but design thinking itself as a discipline should be matched and meshed with marketing, because it will amplify your abilities to understand and get new ideas. The second is called service dominant logic. Services dominant logic. This is a new development where every product is really all about a service. And when this came out, we knew this. I remember Ted Levitt once saying, people aren't buying drills, they're buying an ability to make a hole. I mean, the need is to make a hole in something, and the drill helps you do that. So the point is, everything is really a service, and we spell out the logic of treating more of our products as service, and how do you sell services. And the third part of it is digitalization. We do a lot in the book with making your firm more digital. So the basic thing, it's humans working with humans to solve problems and to create value. Now, let me go to the next book, social media marketing. I got very interested very early in figuring out how Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, so many others, now YouTube, how they're going to work out. And this is the fourth edition of social media marketing. It's been very popular. I did a check, and I realized there's a lot of books out on social media marketing at different levels. Ours is distinguished, first of all, because we recently were told that we got the prize. The fourth edition was ranked among the best marketing advertisement books in the world by Book Authority, which does its reviews of books. This is the fourth edition. Particularly Mark Opresnik, one of the co-authors, he went to German companies, and German companies are admired for a lot of successful things, all the way from Mercedes cars, all the way to other things and chemicals and so on. And he found out, are they using social media? How advanced is their social media? What are some of their stories of good successes with the social media? What are their successes? What are bad stories? So that the book is more than an attempt to explain how to use Facebook, but they explained it. How to use Instagram, they explained it. But it has stories about the use of the social media to do that. Now, the interesting thing that has recently happened was told to us by Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble was one of the first companies to make good use of the social media in Facebook and so on. And they have lately said they realized they overused it, they overshot, that it's been useful, but now they know what works and what doesn't. And their anxiety to try everything, they spent a lot of money, but they learned finally what is working and what can be measured as increasing the return on investment. In other words, how to use Facebook in a way that it will really work for the company. So, and we incorporate in this social media marketing, not only the explanations, but many examples, many from Europe, of companies and what they did with these new techniques. I'm excited about this sixth book called Advancing the Common Good, Strategies for Businesses, Governments, and Nonprofits. Actually, strategies for all of us. Common good, what does that mean? Well, we normally never think of the common good. We think of our good, how to advance ourselves. In fact, now more and more people are saying, me, the brand, I'm a brand. How can I get ahead? Or what's good for my family? Or if I have a family, what's good for my city or my company? What's good for my country? Well, those are levels of thinking about the good of some group. The common good is a high concept. It's what's best for people, what's best for society. And let's take an example. Today, there's talk in the United States, should we pass a wealth tax? Now we have an income tax. And actually, what we really need to do is raise the income tax on the rich, because too much money is being in too few hands, and too many people are not, who are facing hunger and hardship. So why do you want to add just raise higher the income tax? Well, let's talk about a wealth tax anyways. Is it for the common good? Now that's interesting. When you pass a wealth tax, there will be people who are happy about it being passed, and there will be people who will be unhappy. The unhappy people are the billionaires and super multimillionaires, because that means they're giving away more of their money. How many are there of such people, and how much hurt do they feel? And then how much good is done by those who are made happy? Well, they've got food to eat on the table now. Now they can afford to go to college. And when you count the number of people made happy as against to the number unhappy, of course you pass a wealth tax. Of course you pass a wealth tax. And of course you unionize. The question, should the company have a union? Well, the management doesn't like it. A few people are unhappy that their ability to make a decision has to be up to the union, a union. Yet, but the union advances the health and the pay of the workers, and there's many more of them. So the common good is to do what we were taught by Jeremy Bentham in the 1780s, at the same time that The Wealth of Nations was being written, 1780s, and he developed the whole idea of happiness. Measure the amount of happiness created or destroyed, and then choose those things for the common good. And guess what it means? When you see a new social movement, is that social movement for the common good? Is women's rights for the common good? Yes, more people will be made happy, and the society will be made better than the few who are made unhappy because they see feminism, they see women freedom, and so on and so forth. Is consumer rights a good movement? Yes. So you go on, and environment, is the environmental movement a good movement? Yes, it is, because if we don't take care of the climate change, we're going to have a lot of damage in society, and a lot of more people will be hurt than helped. So this is my way to illustrate and explain what companies that it's a good way to judge a company by, are they doing anything for the common good besides making profits? And it goes into the whole question, by the way, if they're only making profits for the shareholders and the workers are not paid very well, and the workers do all the work, should something be done about that? Should a company change from being run for the shareholders to being run for the stakeholders. Stakeholders are your employees, of course, your customers too, your communities, your suppliers, your distributors. It's a team that produces wealth. A team produces wealth. So are you running anything for the common good as a company? And that goes back to my earlier talk about branding. Branding, your brand must convince people that you're more than a money machine, a profit machine. You're making things worthwhile. And this will be the last book. Okay. Let's see. There we go. And this would, I'm going to be brief on this because I've always been interested in specific areas, sectors. One is the health sector. I did an earlier book than this one, but this one just got published. This is actually the second edition of Strategic Marketing for Healthcare Organizations. In other words, we want patients in a hospital to be served better, to know the agony that they may be going through and how to make them, don't put 40 patients all in one room, separate rooms, the dedicated service to each one, a concierge for each one, basically. And what about just the doctor who runs a medical practice? And should he keep his patients waiting? His office is full of 10 patients all waiting because they came on time, but he's so late and so on, and their time is of no value to him. It goes into all these questions of how to make our medical and health people work better for the health and satisfaction of the public. So let me stop here. And Professor, those are some of the things I've been thinking about recently. And we can find out if you want to comment on any of this, or if there are questions also that you are collecting from the audience. I'd be glad to, if there's time, to answer them.
Thank you, Professor Kotler. That was a wonderful presentation. There are a few questions from the audience. I will just communicate those to you. But before I do that, I must say that it's been really a very proud moment for my colleague, Professor Padmini Srinivasan, who is the chairperson for the MBA program, who's also listening in, and for myself and for the students of the marketing club, the MASH club, who have organized this event with you. It's really a great honor. So I'll just go straight to the questions. The first question is about e-commerce. The question is, will the e-commerce market get saturated as new businesses are coming in and doing well in less time? So essentially, I think
well, it's interesting. Yeah, thank you for that question about, you know, in that connection, we should mention COVID, which has hurt so many people around the world. And it has certainly put many people and businesses out of work. And the writer of that question was talking about a lot of new businesses. Is the world going to be saturated with new businesses? Well, here's the thing. Many businesses get destroyed over time by COVID or something else, and many new ones come up. The worst way to start a new business is to make it a carbon copy of another business. You know, this happens when you see a business that's making a lot of money, you say, well, we'll copy it because they don't need all of that. We'll be an alternative, and we'll be a little cheaper. We may not be better, but we'll be cheaper. By the way you always win, and the Japanese taught us that lesson. If you can make something with higher quality at a lower price, you are a winner. Higher quality and a lower price. The Japanese in the 1980s looked at our automobiles, our Buicks, our other cars, and said, our cars, we can make Toyotas that will be less expensive and last and not pose any problems of reliability. As a matter of fact, you won't have to bring your car back for to be fixed because it's made so reliable, it will work in the worst of weathers. So the point is that new businesses are always being formed, and you have to be innovative. I mentioned COVID because there's so many businesses that people would go to enjoy, to go to a restaurant, and they can't go to restaurants without exposing themselves. And then someone says, well, we could do outside dining. We could deliver, we could have people, if we're a grocery, we could have Instacart. So Instacart becomes an innovation. Namely, there's a family at home. They send in the goods they want someone to pick in the grocery store and put together in a package. And then all we have to do is drive our car, open the trunk of our car, and call them, and they bring our packages for us. So there's so much innovation going on with the COVID thing too. And it will continue to be a world of innovation and some deaths. Yes.
Thank you, Professor. There's the second question is, in your book, Marketing 5.0, you talk about technology. So this question says, how will technologies impact the privacy of consumers, especially with the increasing concern about privacy?
It's an excellent question. It's haunting all of us. There's a woman named Shoshana Zuboff, something like that, who's raised the question really much about how companies know just too much about us. And they do it because everything is traceable. When we go to a bank and deposit money, and we use our credit card. When we're in a supermarket and we're shopping, there's cameras that could watch how many people stand in front of a certain display, how long do they look at the lower shelves or the top shelves. Data is being collected all the time, and of course on Facebook. Facebook is the villain in this. In fact, it's kind of, the article that I saw is about this woman who is attacking Facebook and Zuckerberg, who is defending it. How do we preserve our privacy? Well, get off of Facebook if you want privacy, and then be very careful about everything you order, and how much, and be careful about answering the phone about some offer that is being made to you. It could be a setup, it could be a scam or a spam problem. I would say that all of us will worry about that. Well, let's say that half the people of the world don't. It's not on their mind to know, to have other people knowing about them. But those who have it on their mind, who want privacy, they're very, very upset. And I think governments now, both in Europe and in the United States, and maybe in India too, are going to try to regulate Facebook and Google and Instagram and so on, and set higher standards for them and higher responsibilities that they have to meet.
Thank you, Professor. I think the next question is about the context of your book on social media marketing. The question is, the pandemic has ushered in a digital renaissance, and is there anything wrong with the way marketing through digital is practiced nowadays? And what is the new direction for the discipline? I guess it's about digital marketing. And do you think it should be more strictly regulated? Of course, you answered that part about regulation in your previous answer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think, is there anything wrong with the way digital marketing is practiced?
Well, one of the real problems with the digital world is that there are hackers around, some doing good things and some doing bad things. The experience of having a bank account hacked by someone, and then going through all the work of changing your email address and everything else that could have led to that hacking. um, we'll need some kind of control and response. But as far as new digital things that are happening, um, one of the great things is that many people in marketing were never taught codes. They didn't grow up. By the way, this I'll back up into something which is very important, and I'll connect it. If you would have asked me the question, what should I, as a student, let's say you're a student, put my study onto, what subjects and so on, and I would say, if you're a marketing student, go digital as fast as you can, because companies are going digital. So you got to be good at that. You can't say, well, I want the creative part of marketing only. I want to just think up new ideas and so on. I would say, please get as digital as you can. And one of the new things in digital is, even if you never had learned coding, there's now what is called low-cost coding. Namely, there are graphical apps. They're like apps, pieces, and you could actually choose and develop your own code to accomplish some kind of logical procedure. So a piece of software, you can build a piece of software by knowing the pieces that you can, and they're graphically shown. You can, they're pictures of pieces, and you click on them and they become part of the software you're building. It's called low-cost coding. And that's I think a lot of students will want to get into what we call direct-to-consumer marketing. And that is to get an idea of a group, collect email addresses of that group, know that that group would find value in something that you can offer, and you go into email and see. And then you're actually not a brand yet, but you're going to move in that direction. And I would, as in a class that I would teach, is I'd have every student go into direct to consumer marketing, D2C, direct to consumer, a program, a successful new business that way. But not only should you pay attention to digitalization and marketing, but also finance. I've always advised my students to understand the financial side of the business, especially if they have any dream to rise in the organization beyond being good at marketing. They're not going to rise unless they're talking return on investment, and know how money works in the world and how to raise money. So I think a powerful combination is the person who is both strong at marketing and at branding and also at finance.
Thank you, Professor. There were many questions, so I'm going to pick one which kind of caught my attention. This question is about what could be marketing 6.0?
It's so interesting that questionnaire who asked the question knows that we're up to a 6.0. I cannot reveal it. It won't. Here's the thing. It is not smart to come out with 5.0 and suddenly put out 6.0. You're killing 5.0. We are thinking, and we have an idea. That person really wants to ask, what's ahead of marketing? That you've covered all the touch points. Maybe it will be more on customer journeys. We're very excited about having companies figure out, how did customers come to them? What touch points were involved, and how well did we perform at the various touch points to get that person to come to my auto showroom and end up buying the car from me? How did I create that to happen? That could be part of 6.0, but we can't say anything more.
Thank you, Professor. There's another question in the context of your book on human-to-human marketing. And this one is about where should a firm draw a line while collecting consumer data? What, in your opinion, are the ethical limits of personalized marketing?
Yeah, yeah. You know, do we want, let's say I sell automobiles, and do I want, and I know a certain consumer who might be ready to buy my automobile. Do I want to know about that person, what an automobile means to him or her? Yes, you're right. It's proper to ask that. You may find out that they have pleasant memories of the first time they had a car, and it's very important. They like to work on their car, whatever. That's open stuff. And then should I find out that a car, some private things about them that will help me really click in to the very emotion that he's not even aware of, or she's not even aware of? Do I want to look so psychologically and almost like a therapist into their lives and know what I can find that would be the click button? So I guess there should be some rules about how far we can go in deep analysis of people to manipulate them. You understand that it is all about being able to manipulate the purchase. And the more I know about a particular customer, the more I will use to get the sale. Is it proper for me to ask friends of that person to give me information on what I might do to tease them to buy me the car? I guess this is a whole area. So here, you know, the real problem is that marketers now have a new issue they're facing as marketers. And that is, our purpose is to sell things, but the world may have a problem with so much being sold, and it's called the climate change problem, that the planet itself may not have the resources to support all the selling, the endless amount of selling, of piling up goods, throwing the goods somewhere, burning them up. We're making goods that are actually to be destroyed. There's a company called Zara, which puts out a new line of women's clothing every 2 weeks. And if you don't buy what you see, it won't be around 2 weeks later. So is that good for the environment? Is it good that we're making secondhand goods? Should we be more responsible and make products that have a long lasting life? They're going to be more expensive, but they won't cause the need to replacement. And yet it raises the question of obsolescence. Are the people who make our computers and so on and our smartphones, are they always making them better? Well, that's nice. They should get better. But is it sometimes not called for? I mean, is the camera that much better on the next smartphone? Or are they just trying to sell more and more? So the marketers sometimes, look, there are some marketers who won't ever touch selling something. I will not work for a cigarette company. I know that's harmful, but I will work for a computer company as a consultant that wants to figure out the next new idea in the smartphone that so they could obsolete the older ones. But the marketers may come under a challenge of, are the marketers the ones destroying the planet? What kind of curbs do we need on how much should be made, especially when there's so many people without the basics? And it goes back to the income distribution horror that we have to solve in some way.
Thank you, Professor. Here's one question about employment practices. I guess it's somewhat related to your book on advancing the common good. We have companies which are leading companies in their field. They have a very good market share, but their employment practices are not best in class. So do you have any views on this?
Well, I've recently wrote an article called "Is it time to give the employee shares in your company?" Now, here's the thing. The first thing I observed is that maybe 50% of the people working in a company are unhappy. They're unhappy for some real reasons. Maybe a bad boss or supervisor, maybe very low pay, maybe no prospect of advancement. So what do you think those people do who are unhappy at a job? They just get by. In other words, their creativity, if there is creativity, is wasted. They just do enough to not lose the job. Well, what is the company gaining there then? Why is it in the interest of the company to have unhappy people, unmotivated people? So smart companies, including Starbucks and others, they reward, they tell the ones who could serve the coffee at the Starbucks, you want to go to college? We'll help you get to college. We want you to enjoy the job. You're a barista. You're good at the craft. You're creative for us, and so on. So companies have to start not treating their employees as dispensable and replaceable, but as valued assets of the firm. And so my article even raised the question, why do we have a separation between the shareholders and the workers? Why aren't the workers shareholders too? Why shouldn't you, as a company, ask your people to let them buy a share or two of your stock at a discount, and so they feel that they're working to make the company more successful because they have a share of it. How do you create that kind of idea? Well, I'm very much in favor of, by the way, worker co-ops and employee-owned companies. And in fact, there are many companies like that now. If you go to Europe, you'll see in Denmark particularly, and a company called Migros, which is a co-op. It's a fantastically big company with grocery stores and clothing stores and so on. And everyone who works there is an owner of the company, of Migros. They're part of Migros. So we're looking for new ways to treasure our employees. And by the way, I'll just give you a little incident, and it has to do with a hotel chain. The Hilton chain. The Hilton chain, technically, they realize that as important as the customer coming to the hotel is, the employee is also important. Because if the employee is sloppy, discourteous at the reception, if the rooms are not cleaned carefully in a period with COVID on top of it, the company doesn't survive. And so employees have to be treated like you treat your customers. As a matter of fact, some hotels say the employee comes first and the customer comes second. if I don't do a good job with the employee, I won't have any customers staying and coming back. So it's a more expanded view of who do we market to? Who do we market to? And we market to our employees as well. And I would like Indian companies to pay more attention to to helping the job be more meaningful and challenging and paying better for the work that the workers are doing. Maybe
Thank you.
just one more question, if there is one.
Thank you, Professor. I think we have come to the end. There are many more questions, but we have run out of time.
Okay.
So I will hand over to Tarun. Tarun, will you take over, please?
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the Marketing Club of IIM Bangalore, I would like to just take a couple of minutes before the session ends. It has been a privilege to host the legendary Professor Kotler. Thank you, sir, for taking time out from your schedule and sharing your valuable thoughts. It would have been great if we had the pleasure of hosting you on our beautiful campus offline, but nevertheless, we view this new normal as an enabler, which gave us a chance to listen to your enlightening words, Professor. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Well, I thank you very much for inviting me. And the IIM programs are tremendous, the IIM programs, and the people selected. I know I would have met many, many talented students in person if I had been there. But I respect greatly the education that Professor Mulkey and others are giving to the students, and my best wishes to you and India.
May I request all the MASH people, if you can unmute yourself and give Professor Kotler a standing ovation, please.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you in India sometime. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Just one
Thank
last
you.
thing to add, Professor, just before
Yes.
we finish. I would also like to thank the senior faculty members of IMB fraternity, including our PGP chair, Padmini ma'am, who graced this occasion with her presence. Our beloved Professor Mulki sir for moderating the session so wonderfully with you and further enriching it. Last but not the least, I would like to extend my gratitude to the entire marketing club team, without whose dedicated efforts this would have been not have been possible. That's it from our side. Good night to everyone in India and good morning, Professor Kotler. Stay tuned to the Marketing Club for many more exciting sessions and events.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And good luck. Thank you.